You're listening to the Tripping Off podcast. You know, it's interesting being a creator on this platform. There's a lot of struggles that each of us face. And even for us in our regular life, there's things that get in the way of us creating and being who we really are. Today, I'm joined by Brave.Dave, and with over 538,000 followers, he knows a thing or two about honesty and connecting with people and what they're really feeling. And today, he shares what it's like being a creator on this platform while also managing his mental health and being a dad. So stick around, enjoy the insight. He's definitely given me a lot to think about myself, and I think you'll gain some insight as well. Thanks for listening. Well, Dave, I'm so glad that you're here. I don't know how the algorithm gods made your page over to my For You page, but they did, and I fell in love. I thought it was so great. It was at a time, particularly when I was really kind of diving into ADHD, because there's a whole side of TikTok about ADHD.
There's a lot of us.
And you made some pretty viral videos about just your experience with it. And so I was like, man, I want Brave.Dave to come on the show and share some of his experience. So Brave.Dave, thanks for being here, man.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having this be my first podcast.
Dude,
it's a good feeling to finally talk with somebody.
not so alone on the other side of the phone camera.
Yeah, I'm like all the other cool kids are making podcasts. Why anybody ask me to be on a podcast?
Dude, we're making a podcast, man. We're doing it.
I know. I'll check it off my bucket list.
Heck yeah.
By the way,
dude.
I love your content. It always amazes me on TikTok because when I thought I had seen everything, right? Someone's like, did you know that there's dream interpretation TikTok? I'm like, excuse me. And there it is. You evaluated mine.
Yeah, you made the dream, and I was like, I made a Stitch video or like a React video, and I did the whole thing. I was like, wow, what a great guy. Yeah, I think it was the followers actually tagged me in your video, and they're like, oh, you got to talk to Brave.Dave. I was like, I don't know who he is, but sounds great. Let's do it.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Yeah. I didn't know there was dream interpretation TikTok until I made a video or two, and then people were like, whoa, this is fascinating. I'm like, I may have just found my niche.
Yep.
And that's how it started. Oh my goodness. Well, I've had a burning question that I've wanted to ask you. How did the name Brave.Dave? What is the evolution of this persona you live online?
I wish it was cooler.
Yeah.
So back in the college days, we lived in an apartment. My best friend and I lived in an apartment, and 4 doors down, there was another guy about our age who had a whole group of friends, and those two worlds collided, and we all became friends. And one day he brought over somebody to meet me, and he said, "What's your name, man?" And I said, "Dave." And just without prompt, without warning, he just goes, "Brave.Dave, beep, 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 beep." And we all just kind of looked at each other. And I said, "Okay." And then they thought that was an amazing thing to call me. So that's when it stuck.
That's awesome. Sometimes the best names don't have a huge history to them. They just stick.
Yeah. I'm not as brave as the title makes me out to be.
Well, you say that, but at the same time, I've watched a bunch of your videos, stalked you a little bit before the interview, of course, as any good host should do. And I followed your page, and I think one of the things that stands out the most is the humility of your page. And you're like confident enough to post, but not enough to believe you'll like it.
Yeah,
you have your little tagline. And so
everybody
there is
had
a lot of
follower
bravery
at
to
one
that.
point, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's everybody starts off at the beginning with 0 followers, then 5, then 10. And what amazes me is, I remember when I had 50 followers, because I'm just a dude who lives here, right? I live in my house, I have some kids, I eat Cheetos, all the things that regular people do. And once you hit a certain number of followers, the viewpoint about yourself changes. People look at you differently and treat you differently. Even at, I'm not even at 1 million followers yet. And the way people talk to me sometimes, I'm like, really? Is that the status that I am now? That people are like, I'm just so, enamored that you would even take the 5 seconds to say hello to me. I'm like, everybody out there, all these content creators are just regular people. And I think that's so easily forgotten.
Yeah.
So I really try to enforce that. I don't want any kind of glamour to that at all. The whole point is that I don't have fans. I just have people that say, hey, I like what that guy's saying. That's it. That's all they are.
Yeah, it takes it away from kind of this inflated sort of ego place to, hey, I'm just a fellow human being here trying to do this with you. And
Absolutely.
it's really grounding, you know? What was the point when you say that? Like, what was the point where you're like, huh, people view me different. It's not just 50 followers, it's over 500,000 followers. When did that, like, oh, people are treating me differently?
Um, it was probably about the time that I started getting hate in the comments. There's like an evolution of a comment section, right? Because for the most part, people that are willing to comment on your page typically say nice stuff. They're like, "Oh, that was a funny video. I'll be your seventh follower." I'm like, "Thanks." But once you hit 100,000,
Yeah.
enough of your stuff makes it out there that everybody's got an opinion on it.
Hmm.
And it, if I could give one piece of advice to someone starting off, it's don't overanalyze your own content, because you could watch your content before you post it for hours and hours on end and trying to analyze every angle that somebody could approach it for. Am I offending somebody here? Did I use the right term here? By the end of it, when you post that, someone is going to have an outside perspective that you didn't think about. And they're going to say, well, did you think of your wife's feelings in this matter? And I'm like, what does she have to do with this video? You know what I mean? It's someone out there is going to critique you in a way that you didn't expect. So don't beat yourself up over it. Just post your content and be respectful to other people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great advice. I think it's tough though too, because what pops into my head when you say that is the one TikTok therapist who got super canceled. I don't know if you saw her, but she posted this video about her client trauma dumping during a therapy session.
Oh,
You remember that
yes.
one?
Yes.
Oh, so for those who maybe don't and who are listening, there was a therapist who made a video, kind of like saying, "Oh, help me because my client is trauma dumping on me in their first session." And it's like, no, that's what you're supposed to do with your therapist. You're supposed to just dump all the stuff and let the therapist be there to hold and support you. And
Right.
she didn't come at it from that angle. Super canceled. Super canceled. Like, it blew up everywhere. I think it was in like ABC News online and all this stuff. So I get it. Like, when you're trying to analyze some of the content and be like, oof, should I post this? Like, is this going to be critiqued? But there's also the other side where you're over critiquing and you're trying to be perfectionistic. How do you balance
Absolutely.
that?
I think it's easier if you just set rules for yourself.
Okay.
I decided very early on, and sometimes I break my own rule, not to a huge extent, but
Mm.
I never involve other people. You know what I mean? Like I'll duet people or stitch them from time to time and maybe have something to say, but it's never about that person. It's about, I had a video where there was like a little boy that gave his mom a kiss, and there was a whole thing about how people were turning it into something that it shouldn't be. And my critique was that that was ridiculous. And, parents and children should be able to have connections with each other without there being that kind of mentality. That was kind of a rule break, right? Because I was involving other people. But
Mm-hmm.
I find most people are constantly talking about, well, I can't believe I got suspended again, or I can't believe this person's account got banned. Like, really? You can't? Because even if they were doing something in a positive way with good intentions, if you stick your fingers in somebody else's pie, that's going to come back on you, whether you're doing the right thing or not. So to avoid all that, just try to keep your content about yourself as much as possible. And just don't worry about the other stuff that's going on out there. Because it's just, TikTok is too volatile. Social media in general is all too volatile. You don't need the spotlight. You have, procured yourself your own spotlight. You don't need to generate more
Yeah.
that has potentially negative outcomes.
Well, and definitely not at the expense of others, where it's like, I'm going to try and create a spotlight for myself by critiquing, being mean, being nasty to other people. Because the sad thing is, there's a lot of people who do that on TikTok, because I
Right.
think maybe just the nature of the platform, there's so many interactive type features, duetting, stitching. And so it can be, it can be rough sometimes, but that's a great
Yeah.
rule. Just
And
try to,
we all came fresh out of Facebook, right? Where that's all we were doing anyway, was arguing in the comments. And now I have the option to televise myself and share my opinion at the same time. That was that was a big deal. It's that's the whole grab of TikTok, is that the organic growth potential is massive. Somebody with
yeah.
0 followers can have 1 million tomorrow. And I don't like to be one of those people that's like, everybody has an opinion and you need to shut up and not share yours. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, knowing that you have the power of being out there to other people like that. So those negative feelings need to not be out there. That's just a personal opinion. There's enough of it already. um don't fabricate that into your own life.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Such simple rules, but so incredibly helpful. That makes it way easier to think about and do. I love it. I love it. So in this journey, coming from Facebook into the TikTok world, when did you start making this content? How did the evolution begin for you growing this platform on TikTok?
I hated TikTok in the beginning. I was
Yeah.
one of those people that's like, that when it was first coming out, um, for a very long time in my life, and it still pokes and prods at me from time to time. I'm trying to avoid it, but I'm very much that is a thing over there that people are doing, and I
Mm,
automatically don't like it because they're doing it. You know what I mean?
mm,
So when
mm.
TikTok came out, I knew very little about it. I just knew enough to know that I didn't like it. And that's generally what I did with a lot of stuff in my life. It's like my late teens, early 20s. I was constantly being very cynical about things. And my wife was really involved with TikTok, and I kept watching it over her shoulder. And I was like, those are the dumbest videos I've ever seen. And then more often than not, I found myself watching and then not saying anything. She's like, you can just make an account. I'm not going to tell anybody. And I
Ah,
did. And it's when you realize that your For You page is curated for you, right? So when I discovered the
right.
depth of the app and how many good people were on there, I became enthralled with it. And she said, you should make content. And she said, people do skits all the time. And I was like, well, what if I need to be like one of the girls, or if I need to be you? She goes, you just put a rag on your head. It's like, what? She goes, just
Yeah,
put a
I don't know
washcloth on
why.
top of your head. I was like,
That's
that's
like
ridiculous.
that's like a known thing on TikTok. If you want to play a feminine character, you just put a towel on your head. It's
Some guy out there is like, I was the first one that put a rag on my head, and I don't have to do credit. But I said, I'm
I
not
want
doing
him
that.
on the
I'm not putting a
podcast.
rag
I
on my
want to
head.
know.
Yeah. So I made one, and it did fairly well. And people thought it was funny. And I like turned my wife and my sister-in-law, who are like my two connections to the youthful world, and they were like, yeah, green light, make more. And I found it enjoyable. It was fun. It became, less of an experiment and more of a way that I was just able, to express myself, because parenting can be stressful if you hadn't guessed. Um, and one of the kids would do something, and I would just look at my wife and give her the that's going to be a TikTok look. Like, you're getting TikTok later.
This is content. This is content.
Yeah. That's what it turned into. It went from an experiment because my wife told me to something that I was enjoying. And I told myself, I'm going to put as little effort into it as possible just to see where I go,
Yeah.
because I wasn't jaded, but I was still not enamored with the fact that people spent so much of their lives on the app. And I was like, you know what? I'll just throw up a video here and there. But once you hit videos that get really,
Ooh.
positive results, you're like, okay, a little bit more time wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, you're like, okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Now we're here.
Yeah, I feel like anyone who becomes, I don't know, it's such a weird thing, but like a TikToker, right? There's this transition where it's like, I'm just playing around with the app, like just having a good time. And then it's like, oh man, there's something about this that's doing something for me as a human that's really special. It's a creative outlet. It's a place where I can be me, where I can experiment with my own ideas, and other people can watch and connect with what I'm experiencing as a person. That transition seems like those who make it big, they have to take. There's others who just kind of play around with the app, but then when it becomes a way of self-expression, it really blows up into something beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And people ask me all the time, they're like, I don't know where all of your ideas come from. Like, they're not ideas. They're just thoughts. They're just thoughts that I have in the everyday world.
Yeah.
I was driving down the street, and I saw somebody in a minivan, and the minivan had like massive like chrome rims on it. And I thought, that guy used to not be a dad, and now he is. And
Yeah.
like that right there, if you just pause that moment, there's content in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people: just whatever thoughts you're having in your day-to-day life, write them down and say, is there something funny about this? Is there something that I could share? That it doesn't even have to be original. the whole point of TikTok is that you make relatable content.
Yeah.
It's sad, but the less original it is, the better, to be quite honest.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Oh my gosh, in the advent of React videos, goodness sakes, like
Yeah. I've had a lot of deep thought about React videos.
yeah, tell me
I'm
about this.
I did my own like kind of bullcrap evaluation on what is actually happening there. And
Okay,
I'm pretty
okay.
sure it's like this sense. So when you send somebody a video and you want them to watch it,
Mhm.
you know, let's say you text it to them and then you don't get a response. And then you're like, hey, did you watch that video? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not the reaction I was hoping for. That's what it's about. It's like how the kids watch Ryan's World and he opens up all the toys. This is
Yes.
our version of like Ryan's toy review. It's us watching people react to things. We're like, yeah, I bet if I had sent that to him, he would have thought that was hilarious. You know, it's our own validation for the feelings that we don't get when we send people videos.
Yeah. I think it's a connection thing, man. I think like that's what's so curious about TikTok to me, because as Facebook and Instagram grow and become less authentic, TikTok saw this gap. And I don't know if they did it intentionally or not, but there's definitely this gap that was created by the inauthenticity of Facebook and Instagram that TikTok just capitalized on so well. And so I think you see that with React videos, which feels like, oh, I'm having a personal connection watching this video with my favorite creator. It almost
Right.
feels like they're just your buddy. And so I think content does really well, like yours, that connects with people, that feels like they're not alone, that feels like there's a shared experience. I think you're seeing a lot of that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's when I make content, I'll have friends that I appreciate outside critique from people whose opinion I value. You know,
Mm.
if you ask any of my friends or family, they'll be very brutally honest about the content I make. And they're like, that wasn't it, man. That one you made, I was like, I don't understand. It was so good. They're like, not really. Okay, thank you. I needed to hear that. Um, it's important for me because otherwise I'll just go on making, a bunch of stuff that nobody wants to see. But sometimes I'll make a video and I know it's not going to do overly well, but
Mhm.
I'm making it because I know that the feelings that I'm having about whatever it is that I'm acting out or talking about, I know enough people also feel that way. It's justification enough for me to make the content to know that they'll see it, even though it's really niched down and it's not about anything too broad, to know that 500 people saw it and were like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, that's good enough for me. They don't all have to be home runs. They just all have to be
Yeah.
relatable to somebody.
Yeah. And it's tough not to get sucked into the desire and the craving for those viral videos, because I think it's those videos that are a little bit more personal and a little bit more honest about our own experiences that keep that connection with the audience. The viral videos, I don't think really build the connection. They build followers. But like if you want to really meet somebody, it's some of those videos that are a little bit more personal that aren't For You page type.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you made one today. I think so, because I think you're wearing the same shirt.
I am.
I
Yep.
think you
Yep.
posted one today that was about, hey, don't worry about niching down your content. Just like be you. And I was like, damn, that's such good advice though. Like, thanks, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, even you're really into dream interpretation. That's what your life is about. If you got on TikTok and every single video was about dream interpretation, you'd probably get off the app. You're like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need all of this in my life every single day nonstop. So why on earth would we do that in our own content? You know what I mean? The reason that the For You page is so engaging is because of the diversity that it brings, and it's
Right.
always refreshing. I want to do the same thing. I want every time somebody sees my face, like, I wonder what he's going to be doing. I wonder what he's going to talk about. I have to watch and see because it's something totally different than what he, did 3 hours ago or 24 hours ago, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy. It's unless it's like if you're an artist or if
Right.
you have a profession, you know what I mean? Like you're different because your content could just keep coming out and coming out with the same thing because that's what your profession is. An artist, that's what their profession is.
Right.
But if I see so many people on here that get viral and famous for one specific thing. The guy in the orange suit that had the big butt and he always makes like the face. I don't know. He's like a really big sensation.
I think I've seen him. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad because when you tell somebody about something that's specific on TikTok, they don't know what you're talking about. They're like, oh man, we don't have the same For You page.
I'm over here like, man, Dave's For You page is like pretty messed up, dude. I don't know. He's a big orange guy with a really big butt. Dave, are you
Yeah.
okay? Should I send help?
He memed himself basically, right? He turned himself into a meme, and he was very popular. Millions and millions and millions of people saw these videos and liked them
Yep.
all. And then he started making other content and then got stuck. And I'm like,
Yep.
nah, we want to see the big butt orange suit, and like, look what you've done. You have niched yourself into a corner. And whether it's mentally or emotionally or creatively, eventually you are going to hit a wall that you can't get past,
Yeah.
and you don't want to find yourself at that wall with no other directions to turn. So at this point, I'm not saying you have to post every single thing that comes into your mind, but you are worth more than one idea, more than one concept. You know what I mean?
Oh my
If
gosh,
you're a
that's so wholesome.
likable person, if you go out into the world and you hopefully you have enough self-understanding to say people like me. I have a lot of friends. Every time I meet people, I'm enjoyable to be around. The things
Right.
that make you should be part of your content. I'm not saying it all has to be. I live a life of sobriety, but I don't really make sobriety content because it's just too much, I think, to involve in my one account. But there are
Mhm.
several things about each individual person that should be a part of their content. The reason you're likable is because you have you're more than the sum of your parts. So you should share all of those things in your videos.
Wow. That was profoundly deep. I
Well,
love
thank you.
that. Yeah. Well, so wholesome too. It's just like you're more valuable than one idea. Like just that concept, like, is huge. Put that down on a piece of paper somewhere. That's a quote. You're more valuable
Honey,
than
get the
just one
t-shirt
idea.
maker.
Hey, print it up. Print it up.
Yeah. And unfortunately, people discover that, after it's too late. Right. And
I
then they're
know.
known
Yeah.
as one thing. And I hate to
Yeah.
see that.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's been some fight for me because I am known as the dream guy, right? I do a lot of other stuff. Like I'm a mental health counselor, I'm a hypnotherapist. I live my own personal life, but the dream stuff is kind of what blew up, and so a lot of people come to me looking for that. And then it can almost feel like getting trapped in a niche corner, like you're saying. I think a lot of creators go through that too. They try and make some more personal videos and they don't do as well, and that really discourages them. So trying to let
Absolutely.
go of the numbers I think you have to, in some ways, just let go of those numbers and say, hey, I'm going to lose faith in the app. I'm going to lose steam. I'm going to start to hurt myself emotionally if I don't continue to make authentic stuff, regardless of what the numbers say.
Right. The people that have every single post blow up, somebody like They Call Me Chris, that's already predetermined. You know what I mean? She's reached a certain point that she doesn't have to worry about that. Now, if you want to obsess over the fact that you could potentially be at that level where everything you post, I mean, she could just post a video that she didn't mean to post. You know what I mean? Like a 3-second video of like her looking at her phone like this, and it would still get 100,000 likes because people would think it was funny.
Yep.
She's already there.
Yeah.
We can't think like that. We can't think, well, They Call Me Chris has the same content over and over and she does well. That's because she's going to do well regardless of what she does.
I'm not 24 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's crazy, right? But
That's
she started somewhere too.
Number. Yeah.
She had to test out stuff too. And even if you feel like you're already niched down, even if you feel like you're already cornered in, prior to making ADHD content, I made around 300 videos about parenting. That's a lot of parenting content. That's
a lot.
And I think it was 250,000 followers when I made my first ADHD video. And now there are some people now that don't even know I make parenting content, which I still do, to this day.
Yeah.
But there's some people like, yeah, he's an ADHD mental health guy, and they don't associate me with parenting at all. There's videos that I have that hit 1.5 million likes that nobody knows exist. And what that tells you is the position you think you're in, you're not actually in, because you could post content. If you just push through and try and break out and branch out to whatever you want to do, 5 months from now, nobody's going to have any idea what you did back then.
It's true.
It's always about pushing forward and making new content. So if you ever feel like you're locked in this sounds negative, but it's not, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? The image that you portray 5 months from now is going to be what people see 5 months from now.
Well, and I think what you said is so deep and impactful, because there's both a freedom and a pain in saying, in 5 months, in 6 months, what you're doing is not going to matter. That's very freeing to say, hey, you could start a whole different side of your life and a whole different self. And in 6 months, nobody will know what the first thing was.
Yeah.
That's incredibly freeing, but also like it really puts it in perspective. It could be like, wow, so I had this really big sense of self about what I'm doing right now. And maybe that sense of self was way higher than it really should have been. I'm not as locked in as I think I am. It's a balance.
And it's a stepping stone, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing today ultimately will help build to the, I don't like to use the word brand because everybody's you have to build yourself into a brand, which is true, but I don't
Yeah.
like relating it. Your image, right? The image that you're trying to
I like
create,
that better.
yeah, is always progressing towards something new. So I feel like it helps me not stress out too much about the kind of content that I'm going to make, because it's always funny. Every time that I have a video do really well, I need everyone to know that I stressed out so hard prior to that video, thinking I'm never going to have another viral video the rest of my life. This is where it ends. It's over for me. I'm washed up. You know, you know what I mean? And
In
that's
there,
what
felt
this
it.
is. Yeah, it's what it does to you. You know, when you have a good
Yeah.
one and then everything else sucks, you think, okay, well, this is how it's going to end now. I had a good run, but that's just simply not true.
Yeah.
Everything that you're doing is just building towards something, better. And it's funny. Go look at your favorite YouTube creator, and go
Oh
back to their
gosh.
very first video and then watch the recent video that they've done. If they stayed doing the same thing, they never would have been that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I wouldn't be talking right now if you had kept making parenting content. It was because you kind of ventured into the ADHD mental health content that things got tagged, followers that followed me, followed you, and then said, Jesse, you need to pay attention to this guy. And that's how we're having this conversation right now. So it just goes to
Right.
show you, I mean, you can't get yourself in that rut. And, on maybe bringing in a different side of things, I think that rut is very, very dangerous because to me, as a mental health counselor, that rut, both creatively and personally, reminds me of the depression rut. When you get stuck in that way of thinking, when you kind of find yourself in sort of this self-made prison almost, it reminds me of the feelings of depression of the clients that I work with who have depression, where you feel like this is all that there is. This is what I have to do for forever, and I can't break out, because they're not really willing to face sometimes that, hey, yeah, you can break out, but that first video that you make breaking out, or that first thing that you do breaking out, probably won't get 1 million views, probably won't get 500,000 views, maybe 10. That's great. Getting out of the rut is worth that risk, is worth that price to pay. So what? People don't see it. Okay, great. It's good for you. That's what you got to focus on.
Right. Yeah, but none of it's in your control anyway. Yeah, and what time you post, what content you're posting, that matters. You can control that. But once it's out there, it's out of your hands. I've seen the greatest example I like to tell people. There's a guy on TikTok who does neon skeleton puppetry, and the background is all black, and he dresses in black, so it looks like the skeleton's moving around.
Yeah.
They call me that one guy. I'm going to give him a plug. I don't mind.
Yeah.
He had an account for like 3 years,
Really?
just making like 2 or 3 videos a day, cranking out content left and right, constantly racking his brain of things to make. And he had like 130,000 followers. And he was getting really frustrated. And one day he said, you know what, screw this. I'm going to make a second account. So he made a second account, and the 5th video or something that he posted got 4 million likes. And now he's got 1 million followers.
Nuts,
Do you
man.
think that correlation of events has anything to do with his dedication to his craft, or the way he was filming, or the time he was posting down to the second? None of that mattered in the end. It was the fact that one thing happened that caused a huge breakout for him, and now he has a bunch of followers, and now he's going to do well for the rest of his content. That's why you can't
Exactly.
focus too much on it. You just have to
Yeah.
post the videos that you are proud of, and then let the environment work its course.
He learned a valuable lesson breaking out. That's cool. I didn't know about that. That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So,
And most people know him from his second attempt, not even his first.
yeah, not even the first 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, that's a long time. That's a lot of dedication.
Yeah.
A lot of dedication. So I've got a question. Kind of circling back to what we talked about before. I wonder for you, right, this initial avoidance of TikTok, but then we have this conversation about how in a lot of ways you're so open to the chaos of creativity. there's kind of this dichotomy as like I'm having this conversation with you, like, TikTok's new and stupid, but it's like, I should also do new and stupid stuff with my creativity.
Yes.
Where where does that change happen in your brain, if that makes sense? What gets categorized as this is dumb, and what gets categorized as, yeah, like I'm trying new stuff?
Uh, so I I constantly forget to do it, but I have to remind myself, if it's something that you're really interested in and you want to
Mm,
grow into something else, you cannot
mm,
think about it in a 1 month um, keyhole view. Um, I used to deliver Chinese food when I went to college. I dropped out of college because I didn't like it. I went to go deliver Chinese food, and I was horrible at delivering Chinese food. I was awful at it. Like I
okay.
quit and got fired like in the same moment. Like he's like, yeah, this isn't gonna work out. I'm like, yeah, it's not. And then I went to go answer phones for a call center, and I was
Oh
like,
gosh.
I'm gonna be in this dead end job forever. And I was really good at it. And a very long
Hmm.
story short, that job launched me into an operational director career, which I have right now. 10 years later, I'm traveling the world. I'm teaching foreign workforces. I'm doing all the things that I never thought I would do without a college degree because, and was any of that in my control? Some, but a lot of it wasn't. It just kind of happened. So it's
Same.
about, if you're in an environment where you feel like there's any kind of potential at all, just handle yourself with the daily tasks that you have in front of you, knowing that this has potential to go somewhere. You know what I mean? Everyone is so
Yeah.
focused on trying to, grab their destiny by the haunches and do something with it. It doesn't work like that. Stuff
Mm-mm.
stuff grows over time. You can't make your money invest harder. You can't make your time invest harder. You know what I mean? If you're in the correct environment and you're doing the things you're supposed to do, stuff will grow. And that's kind of what I saw on TikTok. I said, I'm never going to be, they call me Chris. Maybe, probably not. I don't know if I'm going to get 30 million followers, but it's a decent chance that I'm not going to, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that wasn't my thought. My thought was there are people on here doing brand deals. There are people on here coaching people for like $1,000
Mm-hmm.
sessions on how to grow their accounts. There are
Mm-hmm.
people on here that get noticed artistically, and then Lil Nas X. There are people like him out here, getting deals. Um, so even if none of those things are directly related to me, what this tells me is that this is an extremely easy platform to get noticed in any capacity in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happened. Once I said, I don't know where I'm going to go. I just know that if I keep making content that I like, I'll grow into something. And I made the ADHD content eventually, and that
Yep.
put me in touch with so many people that do like mental health organizations and mobile apps and all kinds of stuff. And now I have a job with one of them.
That's
And I
so
got a
cool.
job because I made a video where I said, I'm off to start a new hobby. I didn't know that was going to go there, but that's where that went.
That's I think the one that I've seen that's the most viral. That one
Yeah.
just blew up. Yeah.
And that's another piece of advice. It's never the ones that you think it's going to be.
No, never, never.
Never.
My most popular video is one I made in about 5 minutes before I left the office for the day because I was like fed up with something. And I
Yep.
guess I guess my carefree, just like, yeah, I'm so sick of you attitude came across in the video and people loved it.
Yeah. I was
That
trying
was
to
it.
make a skit. I was trying to make a really elaborate, thought out skit about how to properly explain that hyperfixation cycle. And
Mhm.
I recorded it like 10 times. I'm like, this is not working out. And I was like, I
This ain't
have to
it.
get a video out before the whole family gets home, because once the family's here, I can't make a video.
Mm-mm.
And I heard, like, she called me and said that she was going to be very, she could be at the house very soon. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna make a jingle. And I just ran down my hallway and said some stuff. And I was like, that's just gonna have to do. Sorry, guys. And then that.
That's the one. And then that's the one.
Yeah.
So, okay. So as I listen to your story, is it fair for me to summarize by saying at the point in which you find purpose in the effort that you are doing, that's when that switch happens for you? When you find long-term meaning, long-term purpose in something, it gives, I don't know what it is about being a person, but it gives you the strength, it gives you the courage to venture into it and to keep trying and to not give up on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
hear.
There's
There's
you'll know it when you're in an environment that has potential.
Mm.
You look around and you, even if it's not direct, you just say, I've heard about people doing well here, and I see that guy doing well, and this person is doing, this thing with that person, and things around me are happening, and I don't know how
Yeah.
to do those things, but I'm in the place in which those things could happen. Now I just have to focus on myself and doing the things that I know how to do, learning in any
Yeah.
way that I can. It doesn't have to all be immediately. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be willing to be involved somehow.
Yeah. That's a great spot to be. That's a great spot to be. There's a lot of amazing therapists. One who started a whole style of therapy called imago therapy. And, he was a therapist who actually went through the Holocaust. And so he talked about and wrote a book
Wow.
about his experience and why he was able to get through and what he realized about being a person from his time going through the Holocaust. And what he came up with and what he shared with his clients afterwards was that if you can find meaning, you can make it through anything. And so as you talk, I'm hearing that same truth all over again. It's like, if you can find meaning in this thing, you can make it through. You can find success even in terrible, terrible places and move to those better places.
Right. And it just because it makes you happy doesn't necessarily mean it has meaning either. All those things that don't eventually have an expiration date to them, where you kind of look around and you say, why have I been doing this every single day? I
Yeah.
don't, video games for me was a big thing. I was spending a lot of time on video games, like 6 hours a day, in the evening time, because that's the time that I had to myself.
Yep.
And I reached a point where I was like, why am I doing this? I don't really know. I didn't have a good reason. So if I didn't have a good reason for doing it, then what's the point really? So I cut like half that time out, and it opened up more time for other stuff. And I, even if you don't realize it, you'll reach that point where you'll say, there are
Yeah.
some things in my life that I'm not quite sure why they're there. And if you're asking
Yeah.
yourself, it's a good time to reevaluate.
Well, and I Googled it just to make sure I didn't butcher it, but it's Viktor Frankl is the name of the guy. And he's got a book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's been out for forever. But it's really deep and was really impactful when I read it. And I'm hearing that same truth. I think a lot of times, just as people, we will do things that seem meaningless, like playing video games for 6 hours. There's meaning there, but it's not good meaning, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
people will play video games because they're trying to not think about how they wish their life was better, or that partner who broke up with them, or how they're not really succeeding in their job and they don't like it. So there's meaning there, the meaning being avoidance or repression or sort of trying to get rid of the feelings. And so if you can find those moments, those times in your life where you're doing things that are not very meaningful, and then change that time over to something that has meaning, oh my gosh,
Right.
you will feel so much more fulfilled as a person. You'll feel
That's
so
what
much more
parenting
worth.
brought.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
very
my gosh.
cliche, right? It's very cliche to say, being a parent has given my life meaning, but we say that because it's true.
Exactly.
Um,
Well, cliche, the reason things are cliche is because there's fundamental truth in it. And it just gets so
right.
obnoxious that it's so fundamentally true that you're like, it's a cliche. But
Yeah.
you're right. Please enlighten me.
It's everyone wants to, when they're trying to talk about parenting to people that don't have kids, they always want to include this emotional role in the conversation.
Mm,
And there's no point doing that, because the absence of that emotion is in people that don't have kids. That's, you can't explain that. You know what I mean? If I asked you to explain the last person that you fell in love with, I wouldn't fully understand. I'd have a general idea because I know what love is, but that's your experience.
right.
From a pragmatic standpoint, parenting is the biggest project that you'll ever take on. And it's very rewarding to see, to take your own experiences and say, I liked this from my life, I didn't like this from my life, and I've heard all of these things in between that I've heard people talk about that I want to implement, and say, I'm going to do that to try and make this person have the best life that they can. And to see some of those things finally come to fruition, because my kids are 3 and 5 now. So a lot of it before was just life support. There wasn't really
Yep.
a whole lot of meaningful moments like that are going to last forever when you're a baby parent.
Sure. I get what you're saying.
But to see some of those things now where, they can talk and share their feelings and share what they're afraid of and what they're proud of and things that they're drawing. And it's just a lot more outward expression where you can say, I was involved in part of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the evidence in that to know that you're part of something bigger is really important.
Yeah. Well, I think you just defined meaning, right? Finding something that's bigger than yourself to contribute towards. I mean, that's really, if you're going to try and put a label on it. I think I'm noticing some correlations with like my work with substance abuse. A lot of people really struggle with substance abuse and connecting with the idea of the 12 steps because of that one. Um, turn your will over to God as we know him. People really struggle with that. Like, well, I'm atheistic or I'm this and that. And it's, I really try and stay away from politics and religion. I think everyone should figure that out for themselves. But I think what people miss because of that term God is it doesn't have to be God per se. It just means that your life needs to find meaning again. And if you've been distracting yourself, if you've been drinking or drugging or whatever in a way to kind of suppress your feelings, in a way to avoid meaning, it's a fundamental truth that you have to find meaning back in your life in order to have a purpose enough to struggle against those things that might be vices.
Absolutely. I had the same struggles, man, because it's hard as an alcoholic to come in fresh off the streets and admit that you're not the most important person in the world. It's hard to
That
have a higher
sucks.
power when you've been your own higher power for quite some time. I've got a 2-year chip in my other bedroom somewhere around here.
Hey,
But that was the hardest
congratulations,
part.
man.
Thank you. It's been a very rewarding experience, and I think that was one of the biggest ones. Was that gave more meaning than trying to run my own life as the star of my own show.
I
Right?
know.
The concept that you are just a part of a whole is scary for most people.
It's still scary for me.
Yeah, and it depending on the perspective and the vastness that you're explaining. Like, there's always a video explaining the number of universes that exists in the world. That's the one that always gets me, because I'm like, oh my god, there's like a billion universes, and we're in. I start to get terrified, but
Yeah.
the more it's explained to you over and over, the less terrifying it is, and the more rewarding it is to know that you are a cog in a giant, cosmic machine. And I am fine with it. Having a higher power has been extremely rewarding. And I lost my train of thought.
No, that's beautiful, man. Well, and there's a lot of things that are that higher power for you, like finding meaning in the community you create online, finding meaning in what it means to parent your children, finding meaning in, the way that you inspire others with your job, like having all these places where you understand it's not about me, but I play a very important role is what the whole thing is about. And I think
Yeah,
I think that's exactly it.
absolutely. People spend too much time trying to find the meaning of life as opposed to finding meaning in life. It's not a problem to solve, right?
My gosh,
It's
Dave,
just
you got to stop with these quotes. They're too good. Too many people try and find meaning for life instead of finding meaning in life. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Exactly it. Exactly it. A lot of times people will be like, I'll approach people and say like, hey, I want you on the podcast. And they're like, what? Me? Why? And I'm like, everybody, I don't care who you are, understands some fundamental truths. And in order to be successful, in order to whatever your definition of success is, but in order to live life and be happy as a person, there's some fundamental truths that you have to figure out. And it's always great to have people on the podcast and to talk about those things. I've had people where their full-time job on the podcast, their full-time job is making OnlyFans content. And we've found some fundamental truths about being a person there as well. And a lot of people talk shade about that too. I'm like, no, like people are people, and there's something to connect with about being a person, no matter what you are, what your job is, or where you're at. And that's what makes it worth it for me. And that's why I'm a
Yeah,
therapist.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the most rewarding experiences from content creation and social media, is that it's undeniable that there is a huge issue with I think in both directions. I think that viewers and followers and the masses of people that watch content, there is a lot of emotional struggle there as well, because they're trying to emotionally connect with people that don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They're trying to find purpose. They wish that they were as successful as the other people that they're watching. And that's hard on people. And I think there are just as many struggles for creators, that because they are quote unquote popular, a lot of those things are swept under the rug, the same way that they're swept under the rug for celebrities, which is why I like what Jim Carrey talks about all the time, because he's
Mm,
definitely kind of ripping down wallpaper on that and exposing the hardships for life of entertainers. And the same thing goes for social media creators. Constant seeking a validation and approval, which you know I myself had to beat out of myself through AA, to stop people pleasing. But it's always prevalent there. It's a very real thing that you have to try to avoid. um, and a big thing for me is, if I post a video that does well and I don't realize that it did well until like 2 hours later, and now there's a
mhm.
thousand comments, I'm not going to respond to any of them. Because if I respond to 5 of them, that's 995 people that I haven't talked to. And then I feel like I look like a jerk because I didn't talk to them. Like, oh, sorry, I missed the boat. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
all kinds of struggles, trying to avoid parasocial relationships. There's a lot of danger for unhealthy mental behavior on social media on the creator side, that I really try to expel. I don't want any mystique. I don't want any clout. I don't want anything that would somehow, you know, separate my identity as a person from my identity as a creator. That doesn't mean I want to tell everybody everything about me. That just means I
Right.
want people to know that I'm a regular person, because the minute that I'm not viewed that way,
Mm,
it takes a little bit of my humanity, chips it away, and fills it in with these things that we've been talking about with social media that I just don't have any interest in. I've
no,
already gone
no.
down that road on my own. I don't need to do it all over again through social media.
Yeah, I don't need to recreate my destructive patterns in a new medium. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
I feel that,
Yeah.
man. I feel that. I'm there with you. Well, for anyone who is listening, please go check out Brave.Dave at Brave.Dave on TikTok. And there's links to Instagram. It's like Brave.Dave official on Instagram and all the other places. Does some really cool stuff. Got some cool partnerships with apps that people should check out for mental health support and things like that. So check him out. Dave, thanks for being on the show, man, and sharing your journey and what your heart and passion is.
Thank you. It was a blast being on here. My christening voyage is done.
I think so.
My first
You're in
podcast.
one piece. You're in one piece. I think the first one went pretty well. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I didn't say anything stupid. My dog didn't run around and make a bunch of noise. And we're doing okay.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, thank you all for listening, and check out Brave.Dave. Thanks for being here. Catch you next time.